What's going on, everybody? Meteorologist Mike Linden back again from our Orlando, Florida studios. We are continuing coverage of Hurricane Laura as it bears down on the Gulf Coast of the United States. If you are new to these live chats and if you are new to my radar, be sure to follow us on our social media channels. Damien is going to pull them up there. Big shout out to Damien and to Matt. They are our editors, they are our videographers, our directors. They're doing everything behind the scenes, so big shout out to them. Again, you can see all of our social media information there: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. If you have not subscribed to us on YouTube, be sure to do so and click on that notification bell. That way you know whenever we drop a new video or whenever, of course, we go live as well. I should also add that these are meant to be somewhat interactive live chats, other than me giving you the latest information from what we are seeing meteorologically. But if you want to ask us a question, be sure to get your questions into the chat. You actually see it here on screen in just a moment. And that's bringing in all of the chat from over Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. So if you have a question, get it in there. I've got the chat up here next to me here. So as those questions come in, I'll be able to answer those questions over the course of time here. So before we get into looking at some of these graphics that I've prepared for you, I want to show you what we are looking at on the My Radar app. Remember, it is free to download on the App Store, on the Google Play Store, on Windows. We are pretty much everywhere. And that is a look there at Hurricane Laura as it stands right now. I've got the wind layer turned on. I also have the hurricane tracker turned on as well. And I'm sure that you can kind of see that number there. By 6 p.m. tonight, Hurricane Laura forecast by the National Hurricane Center to reach Category 4 status. That's winds of 130 to 156 miles per hour. I mean, we're talking catastrophic damage at this point, folks. And in fact, Hurricane Laura here really hustling a little bit in the sense where the update that just came out from the National Hurricane Center potentially seems to suggest that we may be looking at an even earlier landfall than anticipated, perhaps later this evening, let alone once we get to midnight or into early tomorrow morning. It looks likely, and I'm sure the app will update here in just a moment, but it looks to be rather likely that Laura could be making an earlier than anticipated landfall. It is really strengthening. You can see on radar it has an eye, which is indicative of, again, a powerful hurricane. It is really starting to get going here. And Damien, let's jump over to the graphics that I have prepared. I've got the tropical infrared imagery here. And you can see, again, that well-defined eye, the banding. It's getting a more symmetric shape. This is all indications of a powerful, powerful storm developing here before our very eyes. As we've talked about, there are limiting factors to hurricane development: shear, cold water. None of that is in the way right now. It is pretty much all systems go for Laura to continue to strengthen. It remains to be seen whether or not it will top out in that Category 5 range. We will see over the course of the rest of the day today. But if I zoom out just a little bit here, you can see that some of those outer bands have already begun to reach landfall. A tornado threat very likely from this as well. So let's advance here and take a look at the current watches and warnings. That red color there that encompasses most of the southern Louisiana, southwestern Louisiana, and the upper Texas border there is under a hurricane warning. That's that red color there. And honestly, folks, for the purple color there, a tropical storm warning, you should almost treat it as a hurricane warning. You really shouldn't get lost in the semantics of this. A Category 4 storm brings catastrophic damage. Not something that is pleasant to deal with. And for folks that live along the coastline there, you're seemingly almost out of time here to prepare. So I really hope that people have been listening to local and regional emergency management officials and preparing as best as they could. We do have My Radar storm chaser Aaron Jajak in Louisiana. He is no stranger to following crazy weather events, and this is just another one for the list. So we will continue to have coverage there where Aaron is. Damien, if you want to pull that graphic up, I think you did there. Aaron is in Sulphur, Louisiana, but I believe that he is I believe that he is kind of on the go right now, trying to work his way toward the coastline, if not toward kind of the Galveston, Texas area. Yeah, if you want to pull it up, Damien, go for it, just so we can give people an idea of where Aaron is going to be. So that is he's right there in the thick of it. So we will continue to have coverage from Aaron as time rolls on here. And if you see Aaron on social media, congratulate him. He just became a dad. So big shout out to Aaron. He's the man. Let's jump back to the radar vapor imagery loop, Damien, because this is really giving us a great idea as to the steering of where Laura is expected to go. And I'm going to have to grab my tool here so I can draw. Yesterday, there was a ridge of high pressure right here over Florida. And I should also add that when you see this beige kind of color, that's dry air. Obviously, Laura, not dry in the slightest bit. It is very wet. So keep in mind, with high pressure, winds rotate clockwise around that, right? So think about this like a cog on like a big machine, right? It's spinning clockwise. Now, low pressure, or a trough of low pressure, is the opposite. It spins counterclockwise. In fact, a hurricane is a gigantic center of low pressure, so that's why it spins counterclockwise. But this ridge over Florida has really weakened big time, which is kind of a good thing in the sense where yesterday we saw it kind of really in place here, and that was working to kind of nudge Laura westward, right? But that ridge has seemingly weakened. We still have this very deep trough of low pressure over northern Texas, and that is going to seemingly kind of begin to push it northward. You can already see that Laura has begun to turn. It's working its way northward here, but that's why the track is expected to be such a hard right turn. Once it gets up near Arkansas, it will essentially ride this trough here and continue to work its way through the Tennessee and Ohio River valleys. But needless to say, I mean, just looking at it every time here on the satellite imagery, it's oh, man. I mean, it's a big, powerful storm, folks. And if you just woke up this morning and you're looking at it from just 24 hours ago, we're talking about significant change. Rapid intensification. Now, what I'm going to show you here, I want you to understand that these are computer models. Damien, if you want to bring me up on camera here, just so people can see me so I can get my point across here. Computer models are not meant to be the gospel. Don't see this and think, boom, that's it. That's what I'm going to go by. That's what I'm going to plan around. Even if it's just, it goes outside of tropical forecasting, because I've said this as many times as well. Just like life, tropical meteorology and even weather in general can change very fast. So models are meant to be model guidance. In fact, that's what they are called, model guidance. So in that sense, they're meant to give you guidance to kind of look at the information, glean what you can from it, and make your decisions off of that. Remember, weather, meteorology is an applied science. So you cannot just, you'd be foolish if you looked at one model and you go, boom, that's it, that's what I'm going to go by. Because there are so many different weather models that look at so many different parameters. So it's good to look at multiple different models to kind of get the best idea as to what's going on. Now, if you want to take this full again here, Damien, that blue cone, that is the cone from the National Hurricane Center. And that center line is just meant to show you the center of the cone. But what's important to remember is that that cone is not showing you where the storm is going. It's showing you where the center of the storm may be. So there's still the possibility for Laura to nudge, whether it be west or east, and that cone can adjust. It's very important to understand that. So we're going to look at a couple of different models here, so you can look at a couple different possible outcomes from Laura and what you may see out of it here. And you're likely going to see some variation between the models. The first one here is the RPM model. I'm going to put it into motion here, and we're going to pause it right about there. You can see that's Thursday morning at 5:30. Let me rewind it a little bit. That's a landfall at around 3:30. And the RPM may be a little slow to grab this because, again, the National Hurricane Center are expecting landfall pretty close to midnight tonight, if not just a little bit after, or potentially a little bit before. Laura is really starting to hustle now. Something else I want to point out to you here is that when you're looking at a hurricane, and we divide it into quadrants, into 4, the worst place to be in a hurricane, or where you're going to find the strongest winds, where you're going to find the tornado threat, is right here in the right front quadrant. Now, without getting too sciencey and talking about vorticity maximums and all of that, Damien, if you want to take me on camera again, I continue to give this example, and I think it's a good one, is think about it when a baseball player is standing in the batter's box. When they swing that bat, and it's not necessarily up here where they're holding the bat, where they're generating the most power. It's when that swing begins and you're making contact with the ball. That is what is happening here when looking at a hurricane here in the right front quadrant. And you can already kind of see that on the future radar signatures here, where we are finding kind of the worst reflectivity, the heaviest rainfall rates, as well as those strongest winds. It's always going to be in the right front quadrant, something important to remember. Let's jump back, Damien, to take this full. You're the man. Thank you. So let's advance this out a little more. Notice that even by Thursday afternoon, that on radar, Laura still has an eye. That is indicative of a pretty strong storm. Now, keep in mind, these kind of events, tropical cyclones, they want to stay over water. That's how they can continue to grow. That's their life source. If they don't have that, then they begin to break down very quickly. A good example of this, if you remember Hurricane Harvey that impacted the Texas coastline and Houston, that storm kind of wobbled between the coastline and the Gulf of Mexico. And the reason why you kind of saw that wobbling is because it wanted to stay over water. Meanwhile, bigger factors at play, those steering currents are trying to get it the heck off the Gulf. This is not going to happen with Laura. Laura's on a collision course for the Gulf Coast and will continue to work its way northward. But just remember that these events, these cyclones, they want to be over water. So significant weakening will occur once it is over land entirely. Doesn't mean that you're not going to feel hurricane force winds. We will talk about that. But let's continue to advance this, working its way through Arkansas and beginning to break down as it works its way into Missouri, western Kentucky, into western Tennessee as we head into Friday and the weekend. Now let's look at the ECMWF, otherwise known as the European model. I'm sure you've heard about this many, many times. Let's take a look at this here. I will get to your questions. I see you folks asking questions in the chat. Please don't think that I'm ignoring you. Just want to get through this stuff, and then we will answer some of your questions. So again, looking at the European model here, pretty close to that center line. Once you see the model starting to kind of align, it gives more credence to the actual forecast. And as I've said many times as well, the folks at the National Hurricane Center, the meteorologists there, they are the gold standard for tropical meteorology. The Navy SEALs, if you will, they're the best of the best. So they are probably not getting any sleep at all there, and working very hard to be sure that they can provide the best forecast possible. Now, as we continue to advance this here on the European, notice that the Euro continues that eye all the way into northern Louisiana, much like the RPM model did, and that's where it begins to start to break down as we get toward the Little Rock, Arkansas area. Let's take a look at the GFS. This is another model that we have at our disposal here, and let's advance it. You see the GFS also kind of aligning with the other models. Yesterday, even, we saw a lot of difference between them. And this is where you're really going to start to see things really begin to hone in. I mean, less than 24, if not less than 12 hours prior to landfall here. And that's pretty much a bullseye right on top of that center line there from the NHC. Continue to advance this as we work our way into Thursday afternoon and into the evening hours following that same path. Finally, let's look at the HRRR. This is a really powerful weather model in the sense, and I made a mistake yesterday saying that it goes out to 16 hours. That was incorrect. It is 18 hours of data that this gets us. And the really great thing about this model is that it's perfect for short-term forecasting in the sense that it only goes out 18 hours. That's less than a day. But with this model, it's updating every single hour. Whereas other models initialize every 6 hours or have different initialization times, 6 to 12 hours. This model is initializing every single hour, and the HRRR stands for High Resolution Rapid Refresh. So this is a really good model when you're looking at an impending weather event, ones that we are dealing with kind of right now. And that is what we are dealing with Laura. And you can see here that the HRRR takes Laura right on that center line. It lines up with the RPM, it lines up with the Euro, and lines up with the GFS. So that kind of lends a lot of credence to this forecast that the NHC has put out and has continued to update here over the past week, if not 2 weeks, that we've begun to see this path. But it's just been kind of recently that the path has gone right over this portion of Texas and Louisiana. Houston was in the cone yesterday, and you can see that the cone has really begun to narrow here. Let's continue to advance the HRRR there and look at the banding coming in off of the Gulf as well. Let me grab my pointer tool here. Look at this. I mean, that is likely to be some significant thunderstorms and even some storm surge potentially occurring additionally right here along the Louisiana coastline in addition to the storm surge from the initial blast from the storm. Let's take a look at the wind gusts here. And this is just going to give you an idea of the strongest winds and when they're likely to arrive. We'll look at the official forecast from the NHC here, but this is more model data for you. And look at that. The purple color there is 60-plus mile-per-hour winds. So we're talking way high-end tropical storm force winds. And that essentially covers the entire state of Louisiana through the evening tonight and into the afternoon tomorrow. It won't be until early morning Friday that things begin to calm down, if just a little bit, for Louisiana, even for the folks that live in northern Louisiana. And this is going to continue all the way up and into, there you can see, up near Bowling Green, Kentucky, late Friday night. Before we get to another graphic here, Damien, if you wouldn't mind pulling up the weather stem camera there in Baton Rouge, overlooking Alex Bach Stadium. I also misspoke yesterday and said that it was the football stadium. It was a little hard to see, but it was actually the baseball stadium for the LSU Tigers there. So, yeah, if you want to pull that up. Thanks, Damien. That is a look right now live, courtesy of our partners at WeatherStem over East Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So there's still some blue sky. So things, again, have not necessarily begun to impact that. And in fact, I have the My Radar app here. I can zoom in. You can see in the corner there. There's Baton Rouge. Not too much going on there. And Baton Rouge is considerably east of the cone, but nonetheless, still goes to show you that for folks that live in that area, they may think, oh, all is fine and good. Meanwhile, there's this monster sitting off the coastline not too far from them. So let's jump back to the weather graphics. Thanks, Damien. I appreciate it. So let's take a look here at the Saffir-Simpson scale. Okay, this is the scale that is used to categorize hurricanes. Let's begin with the Category 1 hurricane. And once we get done with this here, before we go on to looking at some hurricane tracks, I will answer some of your questions that we have here. So a Category 1, winds between 74 and 95 miles per hour, minimal damage. We're talking tree limbs flying off and potential power outages as a result of that. Category 2, 96 to 110 miles per hour. So we're not only talking tree limbs, potentially whole trees coming down. Some weaker roofs also might start to see some shingles flying off. And at this point, any lawn equipment that you have outside that has not been brought inside easily could get blown away. Let me advance this again here. Category 3, this is what Laura is right now. We're talking devastating damage, 111 to 129 miles per hour. Storm surge at this point is rough, folks. Rough storm surge. And again, storm surge there is water that is being pushed inland that doesn't belong there. And some spots with Laura, with this forecast, could see upwards of 13 feet of storm surge along the coastline there. Now, a Category 4, this is what Laura is forecast to be. Now, there is the chance that it may weaken to a Category 3 as it's making landfall, but nonetheless, you should prepare for the worst in a situation like this. Category 4, we're talking catastrophic damage, 130 to 156 miles per hour. I mean, at this point, let alone the parts of the trees coming down, weaker homes also might start to give way at this point that are not built up to particular codes. And then a Category 5, Chief Meteorologist Leslie Hudson mentioned this last night, and she saw the damage from Hurricane Michael firsthand in the panhandle of Florida. And she said a Category 5 hurricane, the aftermath just looks like a war zone. I mean, we're talking extensive catastrophic damage. And it's certainly something that we are going to have to continue to monitor here with Laura, with the potential for further strengthening at that point. So, Damien, if you want to bring me up on camera here, before we get to some of the historical tracks, I will answer some of the questions that are coming in. Let me pull over my computer here so I can do that. I got to do some moving around here. So if you guys have any questions for me, you can ask me them now, and then I will answer them as they come in. Beyond this, I will, as I mentioned, I will, jump back to the graphics here. So Beverly Smith is asking, will the center of Mississippi get anything from this hurricane? So let me pull, Damien, if you want to take the My Radar app again in full here. So Mississippi is not in the cone, and Mississippi almost avoids the worst almost entirely, although with this storm moving northward, you're still very likely to see kind of the outer bands of the storm working its way toward you. Southern Mississippi, particularly Biloxi, could be dealing with potentially a good foot or so of storm surge, so that's something to monitor as well. And we will, I'll have the storm surge graphics here for you in just a moment. All right, let's jump back to the chat here, see what else we have here. Jessica's saying anything is possible, and it's somewhat true in the sense where with a storm like this and with the factors at play, with how warm the Gulf of Mexico is, upwards of 90 degrees, that's insanely warm. Gets warmer by the year, mind you. And this year is a particularly warm year. So a lot of fuel. So Jessica, yes, anything is possible in the sense where there's really not much working against Laura right now. It's kind of like a knife through butter at this point. Longoria asking, so do we have to board up windows? It really depends on where you live, Longoria. And again, if I pull up the infrared imagery here, so I'm hearing that, can you guys hear me? I just want to be sure that you guys can hear me here. I'm pretty sure that we have audio. Haven't heard anything. Damien, we have audio here? I just had a message from someone reach out to me saying that we don't have audio. You should be able to hear me here. Okay, we have audio. Okay. All right, so we're good in that sense. All right, I'm going to continue here. So Longoria, it depends on where you live. You're really kind of almost out of time if you live along the Gulf Coast there to do so very safely. If you have any time, if you have the plywood, if you have the hurricane shutters, those needed to be up already, but get them up literally right now. Stop watching our chat and go do that right now. Let's see what else we have here. Gianna says, can 2020 get any worse? No kidding. What a year to forget. And it's still August. I have to continue to remind myself that it's August, folks. We are not even in the peak of hurricane season. We're kind of coming into it right now. Wild stuff. William says, of course you board up your windows. Absolutely. It really depends on where you live. So let's see what else we have here. Marlon saying, yeah, we still have 4 months of 2020 left to go. No kidding. No kidding. What a year it has been. Greg saying, can you imagine dealing with this on top of a pandemic? Yes, and that is a humongous concern, let alone for the global health impacts, but for these communities that have already begun evacuations, being able to take people and to put them into shelters and to continue to deal with social distancing, it's a challenge. But this is when you really test the resilience of humanity, really, and bear in mind, the people along the Gulf Coast, these are some strong people, some people that have been through some bad storms, as we are going to take a look at here in a moment. But anyway, I digress. Let's keep going. Andrea saying, thank you for the update in education. Absolutely. That's why we're here. And again, we're going to continue to keep you the rest of the way forward. Kim asking, what does this mean for Arkansas? Wind speeds, lots of rain. Arkansas very likely could be looking at near Category 1 strength hurricane winds, which are 74 mile per hour winds, and for sure tropical storm force winds. So not necessarily a boarding up the windows kind of situation, Kim, but if you have any patio furniture, if you have a grill, it's just always kind of better to err on the side of caution. Bring that inside, put it inside your garage. Any children's toys that you may have, bring those in too. And if you have a trampoline, I can't reiterate this enough, grounding it, I keep saying staples, those things you put on the base of it. Those are okay, but they have been known to fail. If you have a trampoline, disassemble that and bring that inside. Those catch wind very easily. And it's one thing to keep yourself and your family and your property safe, but you want to be sure that you're being a good neighbor, right? The last thing you want is for your trampoline to blow into your neighbor's house. It's gonna be real rough for you at the potluck and the block party after that as well. Let's see what else we have here. Stephanie saying Northeast Texas impacts. We're close to the cone and watches and warnings. Yes. Let's see what else we have here. Rick saying it'll change the landscape. And you're right. I mean, it sounds pretty extreme and it sounds pretty scary, but you're correct. I mean, just look at Hurricane Michael again in the panhandle of Florida. Still recovering from that. And power outages, mind you, for people that are in the midst of this here, power outages could last longer than a week, if not a month, because emergency crews are going to be very busy from this. So thank you so much again, everybody, for getting those questions in. I will look again here at these questions if you have more for me. So keep those questions coming. If you have questions about the app as well, we are here for you as well. Our customer support team, those guys are the best in the business. So if you send them a message and it comes in over our social media channels, they're really great about reaching back out to you to give you the best way forward possible. So Damien, if we can now jump over to the weather graphics here, I'm going to load them up. Let's take a look at some historical tracks here. And what I mean by historical tracks are looking at the path of hurricanes of years prior. And I've picked a couple here that are all kind of in the Gulf Coast and right around the kind of same place that Laura is expected to go. And you're probably looking at this and seeing some very memorable names here. And there's a reason for that. I mean, Rita, Katrina, Andrew, Audrey, and Ike, powerful, powerful storms, Category 4, if not 5 storms. Now, there are many reasons for that, but one big one is the Gulf of Mexico. That is why anytime a storm is expected to get into the Gulf, regardless of where it goes, with how warm it is, it's a relatively small body of water compared to the Atlantic and the Pacific. So a very small body of water, it's very warm historically. So it's just really never a good thing when a storm gets trapped in the Gulf of Mexico. We saw Marco a couple of days ago. Marco puttered out very quickly and really began to break down very quickly. It was working against that ridge over Florida, and as well as a lot of dry air getting pulled into it. So Marco kind of took the fall, if you will, for Laura. Marco could have been pretty rough in and of itself, but it's pretty rare for storms to be in the Gulf and just not kind of do anything. Typically, storms that we see kind of come this way are pretty rough. And again, you're looking at this graphic and you're likely seeing a couple of names that are a little scary. Ike, Rita, Katrina, Andrew, and Audrey, well before my time in 1975, but still a historical storm that you can see landfall-wise. Rita and Audrey are very, very close to what the path is for Laura. In fact, Rita is very close, very, very close there. And we told you during our hurricane series special at the beginning of the season that the analog, meaning the year that kind of lines up well with 2020 in terms of looking at all of the big factors, looking at global circulation patterns, water temperature, all that stuff, that 2005 most matched up to this year. Now, it's already been a historical season in the sense where we've had so many named storms. I believe we're now up to 13 named storms. It's not even September yet. 13 named storms. We are working our way through the alphabet here. So 2020, a historic year for hurricanes, and you can see that it lines up very well with a very catastrophic year for hurricanes, 2005 in the Gulf of Mexico. Now let's take a look at the storm surge potential. And this is where you really need to take this very seriously, in the sense that the number one killer from natural disasters, the number one killer is inland flooding. It's not the wind, it's not lightning, it's not hail, it's not snow, it's inland flooding, or flooding in general. Flash flooding, it's water. And this is very important to understand, that for anybody that lives in this storm surge warning area, that's almost the entire coastline of Louisiana and a good portion of Texas. I mean, look how far to the south that extends. I mean, we're talking Galveston, Texas is in that. What's important to remember here is that it's water that's not supposed to be there, right? And this is a product from the National Hurricane Center where you're seeing blue. That's wind, or water rather, greater than a foot. So that's on the low end for this event. So from Luke Jackson through to Jamaica Beach, through to Galveston, the Bolivar Peninsula, it starts to see things ramp up. And then look what happens as we get closer to where landfall is likely to be. That jump is considerable, from 1 to 3 to 6 to near 9. I know the red says greater than 9, but there are some areas there in the red that could be looking at 11 to near 13 feet of storm surge inundation. And look how far inland that goes. Again, not something to be taken lightly here. Through to Lake Charles, here to Moss Bluff. Let me zoom back out again, get my bearings. We're in Louisiana here. I mean, look at this. That whole coastal community, the whole southern edge of the state, 9 feet. Greater than 9 feet, I should say. Again, 11 to 13. We work our way eastward here, and you're not necessarily looking at a landfall situation over here, but near 3 feet of storm surge. How about New Orleans? About a foot of storm surge, if not a little more locally. And then look what happens as we go all the way to Mississippi and near Alabama. I mean, again, you guys are not in the cone whatsoever. You're not looking at a landfall at all. You're in the clear in that regard. But look at this. Again, just from Laura making landfall, and with the seas as rough as they're expected to be, a foot of storm surge. So this is the part of the forecast here, let alone the winds. That is very important, and it is important to prepare for that. It's the water, especially for folks along the coastal area, that can become very deadly. Let's take a look here at the wind radii graphic here. This is from the National Hurricane Center. That red color there, those are Category 1 force winds. Category 1 hurricane winds, I should say. The orange color, 57 to 73, that's high-end tropical storm. And then yellow is kind of on the lower-end tropical storm. And I just want to show you where the winds are likely to be and kind of the size of it. Because with a hurricane, it's really the center. It's the eye where you're finding those, as expected to be, Category 4 strength winds. That is where you're going to find the strongest winds. But outside of that, you still could get winds, as you can see here, upwards of that Cat 1 strength, 74. And look at how far it encompasses. I mean, making landfall and extending considerably far to the north. So, I mean, I'll measure this here for you. It's not showing up on the top, but you can see that's a good 80 miles or so of winds there. 70 to 80 miles in size there. That's a lot. That's a big area dealing with Category 1 strength winds, let alone how much stronger they could be at landfall there. As we continue to see this work northerly, someone asked about Arkansas. Well, watch this. This is Thursday morning at 8 a.m. Cat 1 strength winds still over Louisiana, and low-end tropical storm force winds across almost the entire state there. Shreveport. Look at the time. This is 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Thursday. Could be looking at those Cat 1 winds over Shreveport, pushing northward even more and into Arkansas. The graphic, the data rather from the NHC doesn't go out that far, but you're still looking at tropical storm force winds making their way all the way into Louisiana, or all the way into Arkansas through Friday. Finally, we can look at this here. I forgot to take this off. The spaghetti plot at this point, I mean, with it being close to landfall as we are, you saw the models. They're pretty much lining up at this point. You might see some difference there toward the end of the track, like we're talking Friday into Saturday and into Sunday. But, I mean, look where this could be going here. Over New York, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, making a run toward Cape Cod, Maine, and potentially up near Nova Scotia. Laura's going to hit the U.S. a couple of times. So that is, I believe that all I have for the graphics here. Let me pull the tropical imagery back up, and I will we'll take a look one more time here at the My Radar app before I answer any of your questions. Again, get those in, whether it's on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. Damien, if you would pull the chat up there, remember that all the chat that we have is coming into one source. And Damien, if you could pull up as well the social media handles for those that may not know them. It's pretty much at My Radar WX almost everywhere, although there is some difference in some places. But we are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. We're everywhere. So be sure to follow us on all of those platforms to get the information as you so need it. Cool. You can drop the handles there, Damien. So if you want to pull My Radar up here, again, I've got the wind layer turned on. I've got the radar turned on. And I've got the hurricane track turned on, which is updated here. And you can see that it is expected to be a Category 4 storm, pretty close to land there, weakening significantly by the afternoon on Thursday to a Category 1, staying as a tropical storm as it enters Arkansas, weakening to a tropical depression before it exits. But look at that, over Paducah, Kentucky, still a tropical depression. So the wind's not much of a threat at that point, but it's a lot of rain that is a big threat. Staying as a tropical depression all the way on its journey from west to east across Kentucky, and continuing to keep that tropical depression strength almost all the way through until Virginia. Wild stuff. Weakening to a post-tropical storm as it works its way back toward water. And, yeah, I mean, what a storm here. But it is down here over the Gulf of Mexico where things are likely to be, let alone catastrophic, but life-threatening for sure. All right, so let's do this now. Let's take a look at the chat. If you guys have any questions for me, remember, I will be back a couple of times today, or we, I should say, will be back a couple of times today. We're working on getting some special guests lined up. Again, My Radar Storm Chaser Aaron Jajak is in Louisiana, so we be sure to follow us on all of our social media channels. We share all of his content there. You can follow him. You can follow us. Regardless, you will see Aaron's content a lot over the next couple of days here. So let's go to the chat here just to be sure that I haven't missed any questions. I want to be sure that we are covering our bases. Again, if you guys have any questions for me, meteorologically speaking, or otherwise, I am here for you here. So I'm just going to make sure that I've got everything up in front of me. One more piece of advice I will give you. It's likely a little too late at this point, but at least for future storms. Now, where did I put it? I don't know where I put it. Either way, I need to find mine. Well, here it is. Having a hurricane plan is obviously essential for a time like this. And having all of your preps done, be sure that you have that plastic tub with your important documents in it, marriage certificate, birth certificate, family photos, things that you wouldn't want to get wet. Be sure that it's in that. Beyond that, you need to have non-perishable foods to at least get you through a week. It includes water as well. And I can't recommend one of these enough. This is a power bank. This one here has 2 USB ports in it. This will keep your phone, your tablet, whatever you want that's USB powered, it will keep it charged. Because if you were to lose internet connectivity or lose power in general, having something like the My Radar app that will give you all of those notifications to let you know what is going on, having that kind of lifeline could be a lifeline, especially for those in the line of this storm that are very likely to lose power. So it's again probably a little too short notice to get something like this, but for future reference for the folks that live along the Gulf Coast, or for those of you that are completing your final preparations, having something like this is a great idea. And again, this particular model has 2 USB ports. I can charge a phone or like a tablet like up to 10 times with this. My wife has one that's the size of a tube of lipstick. There are tons of them. I highly suggest having one of these. I mean, it's almost an essential item at this point, especially if you were to lose power. You would have no way to be able to charge your phone if you needed to even reach out to emergency services. So let's take a look here at the chat. I'm going to look at the YouTube comments here. We've got a lot on YouTube. Holy moly. All right. Let's see. Looks like it's winding westward to Houston, Diane says. Again, the possibility is there for it to wobble a little more to the west. Right now, Houston is not in the cone, but I know that the mayor of Houston yesterday was tweeting that after 6 o'clock tonight that you shouldn't be on the roads at all. So listen to the guidance from local officials there. That's always going to be what you should do. We are here as meteorologists to give you what we're seeing weather-wise, but when it comes to boots on the ground, listen to those boots on the ground. Let's see. SL Sully, will you be live streaming tonight? Yes, that's a great question. Chief Meteorologist Leslie Hudson, I said that the NHC, those guys are like the Navy SEALs of tropical forecasting. Well, you might as well consider Leslie one of those Navy SEALs too. She is an expert in tropical meteorology. One thing about meteorologists all across the country, it's almost like ice cream, right? Like, what's your favorite flavor? Some meteorologists prefer snow. Others may prefer severe weather like tornadoes, derechos, things like that. Leslie likes it all, but when it comes to, she's born and bred here in Florida, and tropical meteorology is something that she is an expert in. So Leslie will be in this evening to guide you all the way through landfall. So she will be in tonight. So that is a great question. If we will be live streaming tonight, the answer is yes. Let's see what else we have here. Someone is asking, will we get into the alphabet names, alpha names? Do you mean the Greek alphabet? Because once we get through all of the names set aside for 2020, we go into the Greek alphabet, which is rare to happen, where you start seeing some names that aren't too common anymore. Let's see here. Dragon Rocket asking, could it regain strength if it makes its way to the East Coast without completely destructing and dying? Once it's not over water anymore, it is very likely to continue to weaken. It will just essentially die, right? Its life source is the warm water. That's why you're seeing it doing what it's doing right now. Someone saying this storm is like Rita. Yes, it is. Potentially upwards of that strength as well. Rita, of course, was, I believe, a Category 5. I should know that offhand here. Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Should know that offhand. Yes, Category 5. Just my brain is in a million places. But yes, the path is really close to Rita as well. Let's see here. Someone saying that they weathered Rita and Ike. Rita was a windstorm much like this and dropped a lot of power line poles in Beaumont, Texas alone. Yeah. Someone saying, how far in East Texas would you expect an impact? Well, East Texas is in play, right there on the border of Louisiana and Texas. What should people in Galveston expect? Well, I know that people in Galveston have already begun evacuations, and you can expect, as you saw there, potentially upwards of a foot of storm surge. Someone asking, is the eye wall defined? It's not a perfectly defined eye wall there, but you can see the eye on radar. Joey asking, could this turn into a Category 5? The potential is certainly there. It's going to do its last strengthening here. There's a teeny bit of shear, teeny bit coming in from the north from that trough, but not really enough to really do very much. It would almost kind of be like a boulder rolling downhill and you kind of at the base of it trying to catch it at this point. What else here? Okay, that seems to be it there on YouTube. I'm going to jump back over to Facebook and just be sure I've got everything covered. It seems like it. Or last question here. Once it makes its way back to the Atlantic Ocean, will it gain strength again or just stay as a tropical depression? Well, Ken, once it gets to that point, it's so far north of the tropics, it would be a post-tropical event, likely to continue to die at that point. You might see a little bump up, but nothing like what we're seeing right here. So that about, I think, is going to do it for me here for this update. Again, I will be back later this afternoon with another update. We will continue to keep you guys in the loop with what you can expect. Again, be sure to follow us on our social media channels. That is where we are keeping things updated as best as we can. You can see them at the bottom of the screen there: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. If you have any photos or videos to share with us, if you can get them safely, that's so important. Do not put yourself at risk to shoot a video. Just don't do that. But if you do have video to share with us, please send it to us on our social media channels. We will give you full credit, of course, if it is your video. That's very important to keep in mind. And again, meteorologist Stephanie Lauber will be in this afternoon. We will be giving you guys some dual kind of coverage from in the studio here. And then again, Chief Meteorologist Leslie Hudson, who again, she is an expert in hurricanes and in tropical meteorology. If you have any questions at all for her, you can reach out to her on social media right now. I mean, she may even be watching this live stream right now, but she was up until, I believe, 5 o'clock in the morning Eastern time following Laura. And again, we'll likely be doing so with it again overnight tonight as it makes landfall. So if you again have any questions for myself, for Stephanie, for Leslie, please get those into us. Follow us on social media. And again, download the My Radar app so that way you can follow the storm at home. You can follow along with us as well. And we will keep you updated. If something were to change dramatically here, we will be back sooner than expected. But otherwise, we will be back for a live stream in the afternoon hours. I hope that you are all safe. I hope that you stay dry. I have been I have been meteorologist Mike Linden, again for Damien in the back, for Matt in the back, who was also up until like 5 o'clock in the morning too, and to our hardworking developers and to our customer service team, everybody on the My Radar team. Big shout out to everybody. It has been very busy and it will likely continue to be that way with Laura, but we will keep you updated the rest of the way as Laura makes its way inland. Stay safe, everybody. We'll see you in the next update.